Okay, this is something that I'm doing by popular demand. For 30 years and more, I have been asked whatever happened to the problem to make my more or less famous novel, BoJack Barron, into a motion picture to be directed by Costa Gavras and written by Harlan Ellison. The long and short of this is that BoJack Barron had gone through any number of independent producer options. And through an option with a guy named Gary Weiss, it ended up being acquired, that is, the option being acquired by Universal Pictures. As their option was running out, unbeknownst to them, but beknownst to me, Harlan Ellison was staying in my apartment in New York when a deal was put together by Eddie Lewis, who was then a producer at Universal Pictures, for Costa Gavras to direct the movie. He was the guy who really wanted to make the film. BoJack Barron had been a signature novel in France, and Costa Gavras was a very political director, and he really wanted to make this film. And he had I think, three movie contract with Universal at the time. Well, Lewis, who was a friend of Harlan's, was going to hire Harlan to do the screenplay. Harlan and I also had the same agent, Marty Shapiro. Universal tried to get me to extend their option on the book instead of paying me the large buyout money, thinking that I would go along, not knowing that I knew what was really happening. Well, there were 2 or 3 months of very tense hardball between me and Universal, which ended up with me forcing Universal Pictures to pay me the $80,000 buyout money so that they would own the BoJack Barron outright. Well, Harlan wrote a script that Costa Gavras didn't like and the studio didn't like. They then hired a succession of other people to work on the scripts. One was Adam Rodman, another one was Faye Kanan, who did absolutely nothing. There was a treatment, I think, at one point by Peter Weir. In the meantime, Costa Gavras had this multi-picture deal with Universal. His wife was a lady named Michelle Ray, who had a reputation, deserved or not, as some kind of terrorist. And another two guy at Universal was a guy named Sean Daniel. And it's really amazing how this guy got to be number 2 at Universal. He worshipped Forrest J. Ackerman, to give you an idea of what you're dealing with. So Michelle Ray comes into his office with a script for a thing called Hannah K, a love story between a Palestinian and Arab. And she says, we want you to make this movie now, before BoJack Barron or anything else, because there aren't any scripts on BoJack Barron. Well, Sean Daniel says, I'll put it on my pile. Michelle Ray says, no, you'll read it now. Slams his office door shut and stands there staring at him, maybe convincing him that she's got a gun while he reads this script. And that's how Universal was forced to make this movie, much against what they wanted to do. They hated it so much that they almost literally buried it at a crossroad with a stake through its heart. I was living in LA at the time, and I had to see this thing because my fate with BoJack Barron was heavily wound up into it. And the only place it was playing was 2 places, once in Eagle Rock and once way out in Tarzana, both places in the middle of nowhere. So they literally dumped the movie, and that was the end of Costa Gavras' deal to make BoJack Barron for Universal. Since then, any number of producers, directors, have tried to get the rights from Universal to make BoJack Barron, the most persistent of which is the French director Diane Carisse, who's been trying to do it for years and years and years to no avail, trying to do it through Luc Besson, through all kinds of things. The thing of it is that in those days, the Writers Guild contract did not protect you against the studio owning the rights forever if they didn't make the movie, which now it does. So a thing called turnaround, somehow in ways that have never been adequately explained to me, means that if they don't make the movie, they lose some kind of tax benefit. So they want $5 million, $6 million to get back some of the movie they pissed away on blown scripts and blown salaries before they'll let anybody else make the film. Now, years ago, Universal Pictures had a big warehouse fire, and the chances are their contract for Buck-Jack Barrett, which I don't have either, was probably lost in that fire. So if anybody out there really wants to make this movie, it's possible that I or they could demand of Universal to produce their copy of this contract proving that they own it, which chances are they wouldn't be able to do. But that is the long and short of why this movie hasn't been made. I wrote a script under previous option, which they didn't like. Many heads of Universal have come and gone since this deal between Eddie Lewis, Universal, Costa Gravas, and Harlan Ellison. Faye Kanan became president of the Writers Guild, was hired for a year to write a script on this project, took a lot of money, did absolutely no work. That is the long and short of why Buck-Jack Barrett has not been made as a film. This does not mean it will never be made, because the interesting thing about it is that with some technological and political updates, it's even more relevant now than it was when it was written. Unfortunately, most of the people who took up on this in a political way were right-wing media personalities like Pat Buchanan. So that, in long and short, is what happened to Buck-Jack Barrett, and there's a chapter in this in a book appropriately titled The Greatest Films Never Made.